Hi, and thanks for tuning in. My name is Rebecca Dmytryk, and I'll be presenting Coyote-Smart California, Understanding Coyote Behavior, Reducing Conflict, and Improving Safety. Just a little history. I've been involved in wildlife rescue for the last 40 plus years, and over the years, the number of calls I would get about nuisance wildlife kept increasing. So about 13 years ago, my husband and we started Humane Wildlife Control to offer an alternative approach to resolving human-wildlife conflicts, one that incorporates environmental stewardship and respect for all animals. Dogs have been a huge part of my life since childhood, and so I've always had a deep appreciation for the wild canids, especially the coyote, our domestic dog's genius cousin. My deep connection to dogs, all dogs, is the reason why I've dedicated much of my time and effort to coyote intervention. Our coyote intervention program is built around education, assessment, and action. We offer in-person and online presentations, one-on-one guidance to residents, and we work directly with government agencies, conducting population assessments, behavior evaluations, neighborhood audits, and help with developing and implementing effective science-based response policies. Okay, with that, let me introduce you to coyote. First off, there's some confusion as to where coyotes originated, but archaeological evidence shows coyotes were widely distributed across North America, including along the West Coast, at least 4,000 years ago. Today, there are 19 recognized subspecies of coyote, and in Southern California, we have the California Valley coyote. And this is pretty typical of what a valley coyote looks like. It's lean, long-legged, built for distance, usually weighing between 20 and 30 pounds. That's it. For comparison, here's a look at the average height and weight of a coyote compared to the California gray fox on the left, the larger red fox, a German shepherd, and the gray wolf. Coyotes can live as solitary, nomadic individuals, often called transients, or as partners. A male and female pair forms the foundation of a family unit, and they'll establish and defend a territory. I often describe them as a king and a queen defending a kingdom, which seems to resonate with a lot of people. Now, this is really important. Solitary coyotes don't defend a territory. They travel far and wide with home ranges that can be 10 square miles or greater. And that's in stark contrast to a mated pair, a king and a queen, that will hold a territory, keeping all other coyotes out. In an urban setting, a territory can be as small as a half square mile. And this is what it might look like in green compared to the 10 square miles of the entire slide. This is such an important point to understand, and I think it's well presented here. Let me play a clip from Dr. Stan Geert's presentation, Coyotes Among Us. And if you get a chance to watch the entire presentation online, I highly recommend it.
All of these polygons represent the resident territories of groups of coyotes living in different parts of that landscape. Those are the residents. And then we have the solitary transients. The transients are loners that have left their packs, are now floating across that landscape, but they're still staying within the Chicago region. So in fact, they're still overlapping in many cases with their natal range, with the pack that they were born from, but they can't stay there. So coyotes are very picky, and only the alpha pair will mate. So once their offspring get to a certain age, and if they start to become sexually mature, they are excluded from the territory, and then they become solitary. These transients, there's relatively little research that's been done on them historically, because they're hard to study. But what we're finding is that they're really important to understanding the dynamics of the population locally. And they're one of the big reasons why, if you attempt to remove coyotes from an area, let's say you do, it's only going to be a temporary situation, because they will be replaced by other coyotes. And this is one of the big reasons why. It's because of these solitary transients. They quickly fill the void. They're just floating around looking for a vacancy. So when you create that vacancy, they fill it almost immediately.
Coyotes are known to be monogamous. Until death do they part. And this is really unique in the canine world. And the male and female make up the foundation of a family unit. The family may also include a helper or two or three, offspring from a previous year, that stay on temporarily to help raise the pups. But interestingly, only the king and queen reproduce. Any other females in the family are kept behaviorally sterile. Seasonally, there may be pups of the year, born in spring and dispersing out of the area starting in late summer through winter, which means the number of resident coyotes does not grow exponentially. Yes, there's a seasonal increase when pups are born, more activity, more movement, more visibility, but that's temporary. The number of adult coyotes in a stable territory remains relatively constant. One of the ways coyotes protect their territory is by communicating to other coyotes through vocalization. It's also how they stay in touch with other family members. Coyote vocalizations are quite unique, and if there are 2 or more coyotes, it can sound like there's a half a dozen. It's an auditory illusion called the bow jest effect. Let's check it out. Coyotes follow a pretty predictable seasonal cycle. In winter, December, January, the pair will court and mate. Males may be more reactive to dogs during this time. And in Southern California, we can expect pups as early as March into April. And while they're raising their pups, both parents can become protective and reactive towards dogs. Over the summer, the pups start exploring, and by late summer into fall, when the food and water is scarce, expect to see coyotes out during the day and for sightings to continue to increase as the pups begin to disperse from the territory. Let's take a closer look. Coyotes use dens only during the first few weeks after the pups are born. If the den is disturbed while the pups are still small, the parents might relocate them to a safer spot. This is what it might look like. Now, if you come across what looks like an orphaned pup, please reach out to a licensed wildlife rehabilitator for guidance. It may be that the parent was just simply interrupted while moving the pups, and they just need the opportunity to return and reunite. So don't assume it's abandoned. Coyotes are excellent, attentive parents. Another situation that needs cautious approach is when a coyote seems unwilling to leave an area and it's during pup rearing season. It might be that the parents aren't able to move the pups. There's this short window of time, about 3 weeks, when coyote pups are too big for the parents to carry in their mouth, but not old enough to travel safely by their side. They just need some time, usually a few days to a week, and during that time, help them out. Keep people and dogs away until they're able to relocate. Around 8 to 12 weeks of age, as the pups become more curious and rambunctious, the family will shift from using the den to above ground resting spots. We call them rendezvous sites. These are just temporary gathering places. Once the family makes this transition, though, they'll continue to move throughout their territory for the rest of the year. Now, I just want to make a quick note here that spring is the time when many species have their babies. It's also the time when humans do a lot of weed whacking. So try and plan accordingly to avoid disturbances during this critical time, if at all possible. Try to cut grasses and weeds relatively low in late February, and if possible, wait until May to trim again. This might help prevent pushing coyotes from, let's say, a relatively safe spot to deeper into a residential area. It's just something to keep in mind. As the pups grow, they begin exploring their home territory on their own, and daytime sightings naturally increase. These teenagers are still fearful of humans, but they're also curious and a bit unsure of themselves. They may hesitate before retreating, which can be misinterpreted as bold or threatening behavior, when in reality, they're simply scared out of their wits and confused. Young coyotes are also less savvy around vehicles and are more likely to step right into traffic. So, if you're lucky enough to reside within a coyote territory, life becomes predictable. And when things are predictable, you can be better prepared. All right, let's look at the diet of a coyote. What do they eat? Coyotes are opportunistic foragers, and they're omnivores. So basically, they will eat just about anything that's not too much trouble. Predominantly, they eat rodents, lots of rodents, followed by rabbits. Coyotes also eat fruit, vegetables, nuts, seeds, grasses. Numerous studies have confirmed rodents and rabbits make up the largest share of the coyote's diet, even in an urban setting. And ornamental fruit trees were found to be the most next important item, followed by trash items, including wrappers. In this particular study, cats made up about 11%, followed by invertebrates, insects, and birds. Pet food was nominal. Domestic dog was rarely present in coyote scat. And when we look at the data from numerous studies, all of them show that rodents and lagomorphs, rabbits, make up the bulk of the coyote's diet, often accounting for 40 to 60% of scat content. Fruits typically representing 20 to 25%, but again, domestic cats and dogs appear rarely, usually just 1 to 5%. This confirms that dogs and cats are not a major food source. When interpreting coyote diet studies, we have to be cautious in our assumptions. The presence of a certain animal does not automatically mean the coyote killed that animal. Coyotes are opportunistic scavengers, so it's entirely possible the animal was found already dead and the coyote simply took advantage of the free meal. Let's talk about cats. Coyotes don't automatically recognize cats as prey. To a coyote encountering one for the first time, a cat is something new. It's a novel animal. With repeated exposure, and let's say eventually a successful catch, yes, some coyotes will learn to view cats as a potential meal, but not all coyotes eat cats. Now, this is one of the most important myths to correct. Coyotes are not hunting dogs as food. Decades of scat and stomach content analysis confirms this. However, adult coyotes, especially those defending a territory and a family, may view another canid as a rival or a threat to its family. And here's another clip from Stan Garrett explaining this.
One of our sources of conflict between coyotes and people are their threats to dogs. And it does occasionally happen. Fortunately, it's very rare. It's extremely rare when you consider that their natural instinct is to remove the competing dog-like animal from their territories.
Transient coyotes, those without a territory, mate, or pups to protect, are generally less likely to have conflicts with pets, but resident pairs are different. If you're in a resident pair's territory, expect them to be defensive around dogs. And what people often describe as stalking, a coyote following behind someone walking a dog, is what we call escorting or shepherding. The coyote is trying to send a message to the dog to move on, to get out of here. This behavior is defensive, not predatory. But if the dog or person reacts poorly, the situation can escalate. In extreme cases, this is what an encounter might look like. This is the classic posture we informally call the alligator walk. Arched back, tail tucked, head down, mouth open. The coyote is trying to make itself appear larger and more serious, sending a message to back off, stay clear. If the threat persists, this might escalate with a lunge or quick snap, often in the air, not making physical contact. You'll see this behavior in the coming videos.
There's a dog going after. That's why he's growling, because this guy's dog. He's not well. That's why he's in that. See, here's the other dog that is not knowing what to do with this wonderful animal. Well, wild is boss. And now we have more loose dogs. What a beautiful animal. He doesn't look afraid at all of that domestic dog over there. I've got bull terriers coming at me on this trail now. Oh, he's got a busted paw. All right, I'm gonna hold for a sec.
There's another reason a coyote might follow or even approach a person where there's no dog involved. The community needs to be really alert and aware, because this kind of behavior is not about defending pups. And if it's happening, it needs to be addressed immediately so it doesn't escalate. Coyotes have a natural respect for humans, and they want to avoid encounters with us. They're also highly intelligent wild dogs and can be conditioned or trained to come close if there's a significant reward for doing so, if the juice is worth the squeeze. Two distinct behaviors can develop. Food conditioning, which is when a coyote, let's say, finds a reliable source of food in a particular backyard. If it encounters a person, the coyote will retreat quickly. And then there's the human-conditioned coyote, and this is one that's been rewarded for approaching humans. They start to relate the reward to the human's physical presence, and they'll tend to loiter in one area, a front yard, a parking lot like this, waiting for a handout. A human-conditioned coyote may also follow or approach a person, similar to how a jackal in Africa might trail a lion, knowing it could possibly lead to a meal. Again, this behavior is not predatory, but it can escalate. Out of frustration, this jackal displays what could best be described as demand behavior, nipping at a lion's tail in an attempt to move it off the food. Here's an extreme example of a coyote that's been conditioned to approach people for handouts.
Come here. It's cold, I know. You're freezing. Got a lot of fur, though. Ow, mother...
And this is a video of Carl the coyote. He'd been hand-fed by people for years. Here he is approaching a family feeding ducks. It's the feeding that caught his attention, the tossing of the food and the noise of the plastic bag. To be clear, he is not after the child, but the food. This case shows how human conditioning can create what we call proximity tolerance, coyotes being comfortable approaching or being in close proximity to people. And if we're aware of it, we can turn it around quickly. And here's another example of human-conditioned coyotes. This is in Woodland Hills, California, just blocks away from where a child was bitten. Again, early intervention can turn this behavior around and prevent bites. Okay, this next video is a human-conditioned coyote I encountered while doing a neighborhood audit. This is a perfect example of what we call a human-conditioned coyote, a coyote that has been fed by people. It's been trained or conditioned to approach people for food, associating humans with handouts. But as you'll see in a second, it's still skittish and fearful, and this behavior is absolutely reversible. Next, we want to test the coyote to see if it's reactive towards dogs, and as we expected, it begins posturing defensively, protective of this area, possibly a nearby food resource, but also his mate is in the backyard of this home. We then escalate the pressure by hazing this same coyote with a scare stick and a barking dog. The dog was then confined, and we continued to document this same coyote. He remained on site and still non-reactive towards humans, curious, soft face. And then finally his mate heads out and he follows. We apply intensive hazing to send a message that this property, this area, is no longer safe. They're not welcome here.
Get out of here! Go on!
According to residents on this block, the two coyotes that had been seen daily, after intensive hazing, they were absent for over 2 weeks. Just to be clear, you're seeing me use my dog in a very specific way. Angus is trained to locate coyotes and respond to my cues, but he is never allowed to chase coyotes. It's just not appropriate, not best practice. Allowing a dog to chase a coyote can lead to trigger stacking, building heightened reactivity towards dogs over time, and that's exactly what we're trying to avoid. One last thing before moving on. Sometimes people misinterpret what they're seeing. Sometimes coyotes will walk towards people just to get around them. I've heard a number of accounts, even involving children, where people describe attacks, when in truth, the coyote was simply moving from point A to point B, and the humans were in its path. This is a perfect moment to emphasize the importance of choosing the right words. Words matter. By choosing words that are accurate and grounded in science, we can help keep the conversation about coyote real. For example, one might report this as an attack, but really, it could best be described as either an interaction or an altercation. No physical contact. For accuracy, we must choose our words carefully. Now, you'll notice we stay away from using the word attack because it can mean all sorts of things. So instead, how about interaction or altercation and whether or not there was physical contact? And if a coyote actually does bite a person or a pet, plain and simple, a bite is a bite. We also avoid using the word pack, which applies more to wolves, and we avoid the word habituation because it's not accurate. A coyote's tolerance for people is best described as being conditioned. I was recently asked how we deal with the misinformation, the hysteria, the sensationalized stories, the online posts that are often emotionally charged, fueling unnecessary panic. Well, for the people experiencing the fear, it's very real. And when fear takes over, people can dismiss science and facts. But that doesn't mean we stop trying. We keep listening, we keep trying to connect, and we keep delivering the facts. Because when people are given the science and the practical tools they can actually use, something important happens. Fear is replaced with confidence. All right, moving on. Let's talk about coyotes in the landscape and how we humans influence their presence and prevalence. Now, we hear this a lot, how people are both amazed and frustrated with coyotes being in the city, in residential neighborhoods, and wondering, why are they here? How do we get rid of them? Now, I want you to look at this interface between the city and the wild. If you were looking for something to eat or water to drink, where would it be easiest to find? In the city, of course. Food and water resources are abundant and relatively easy to find in the city, and coyotes are simply doing what other animals do. They're following the resources. In addition to unintentionally feeding coyotes, what's oddly common is people intentionally feeding them. The photos of the 3 platters of cold cuts, those are from Huntington Beach, in the same general area where a child was later bitten. The images on the right are from Beverly Hills, and the one in the middle showing a coyote enjoying a raw steak is from the San Fernando Valley. Like these other species on the right, coyotes have adapted to tolerating humans, to living, even thriving, in close proximity to us because we've made it so the rewards outweigh the risks. But as you'll see later, we humans are ultimately in charge of this narrative. All right, let's take a look at how we influence coyote behavior closer to home. Consider your property from a coyote's perspective, not just the obvious attractants like compost bins, pet food left out, fallen fruit, unsecured trash, or a water feature, but look for the conditions that attract the animals that coyotes prey upon, like rodents. Birdseed feeders are a major attractant for rodents, and rodents attract their predators, including coyotes. To a coyote, a busy bird feeder and the surrounding vegetation can become a reliable hunting ground. Pet food left outside, whether in a backyard or for community cats, is another major attractant. It draws wildlife into an area, increasing the potential for conflict with the cats and the community. But we have the power to change this. Thanks to the groundbreaking work of Dr. Numi Mitchell, we have clear evidence that eliminating food resources dramatically decreases coyote activity. And we've seen this work firsthand. For example, coyotes were repeatedly visiting a neighborhood and causing concern. The reason? They were finding reliable food and water in at least one backyard. And they were also finding shelter at the same location, under the home. But once the food was removed and the animals were evicted from under the home, the visits stopped immediately, and their presence in the neighborhood decreased as well. And here are some snapshots of the process. This was performed by Sam Ramirez with Humane Pest Control, Inc. So he installed a one-way device, allowing the animals to leave safely on their own. Next, Sam built and installed a secure access hatch. To be clear, these one-way devices are custom-built and only used in specific situations where we can be sure we're not entrapping animals under the structure. So what residents can and should do is walk their property with fresh eyes. Look for places a coyote could access, and at the same time, look for spots where rodents might be able to access your home or outbuildings. Any gaps that are half an inch and greater. You'll want to make sure those openings are properly secured and take measures to remove any rodents that are inside. We recommend a no poison, no kill approach, and you can learn more about this on our websites, and there's also a do-it-yourself video available online for homeowners who want step-by-step guidance. And just a word about poison bait stations like this one, commonly placed around buildings and around homes. What's inside is essentially food, designed to attract rodents, but it can also draw other wildlife to the property, including coyotes. Here's an example of an opossum that's been attracted by the poisoned food inside the box. Rodenticides don't address the root cause of an intrusion. The only sure way to permanently keep rodents out of a building is through exclusion. So again, look around your property and make sure your home is secure, that no animals are taking up residency, and that you're not attracting unwanted visitors. And you might find this helpful. This is our Coyote Safe Yard and Neighborhood Checklist, and you can find it in the link below. Okay, let's talk about other ways you can safeguard your property, specifically fencing ideas. Like any other dog their size, a coyote can leap or vault up to 4 feet, as this video demonstrates, but they can easily scale a 6-foot fence. But there's a solution. This coyote-proof fence design was developed in the early 1980s. The key features are an outward extension at the top and an extension at the bottom to prevent digging. These extensions can easily be added to existing fences. Here's an example of the base of a coyote fence installed in Los Angeles by my colleague Sam Ramirez. As for a commercial solution, there's a product called Perfect Fence. These systems are designed to keep cats contained, but they can also prevent coyotes and other animals from scaling an existing fence. Now, here's a video of a very agile coyote hopping over a low fence, and we advised the homeowner to install a simple, inexpensive fence topper. It added just enough height and was a bit flimsy, adding to the effectiveness. Even with a solid coyote-proof fence, we recommend a fully enclosed outdoor area for small pets. This catio is an excellent way to allow cats and small dogs to enjoy sunshine and fresh air and be fully protected. Okay, let's look at some other options to deter coyotes from yards. This is the Yard Enforcer. It's a motion-activated sprinkler that can be set to go off day or night. It's a great deterrent. We've used it successfully to keep coyotes and other animals out of yards. And this is the Yard Sentinel. It emits both flashing lights and variable sounds day or night. And effigies in the human form can also be used to deter coyotes. When paired with a motion-activated light, it can be even more effective. Balloons also can be a quick, low-effort deterrent. Use mylar or thick latex punching balloons. They can be hung from eaves or low limbs. Again, add a motion-activated light to increase effectiveness. Fladry is a simple, low-tech line of rope with small fabric flags tied on about every 11 inches. The fluttering, shifting edge creates this visual wall that wolves and coyotes are reluctant to cross. Fox lights are proven to deter predators, and they're well-made, very durable. These lights switch on automatically at night and flash different colors at random intervals. You could also pair these lights with a radio on a talk station for more effectiveness. And finally, human urine. It can be used as a short-term deterrent. Not commercial predator urine from a fur farm or urine farm, just human urine. It might sound unconventional, but it can be effective. Again, it's a short-term measure and works best when paired with other strategies, especially focusing on reducing attractants. Before moving on to what direct actions you can take when you encounter a coyote, I want to emphasize 2 very important points. Coyotes are here in the urban landscape because we have, in a sense, invited them. So it's imperative that we focus on reducing those anthropogenic or human-related food subsidies that attract and sustain them, because none of the deterrence or scare tactics are going to be fully effective if we don't. And it's not about one person reducing attractants. It must be a community-wide effort. All right, let's talk about aversion conditioning and what that means. Aversion conditioning is a suite of tools and techniques that we use to help reshape coyote behavior. And hazing is a form of aversion conditioning. It's pretty simple. If you've ever protected your meal from a dog, then you have successfully hazed a canid. And as you may have experienced, the animal needs to know you mean business. To be clear, hazing is about communicating boundaries, establishing and reestablishing healthy boundaries. The very basics: be big, be loud, and assertive. You can make yourself appear larger by waving your arms over your head or by taking off a jacket and twirling it, but you can also use hazing props. Something as simple as a trash bag. Trash bags are lightweight and easy to carry in a pocket. To use one, raise the open bag and scoop air into it so it balloons, and then snap it sharply. The sudden size and sound makes you appear much bigger and can startle a coyote away. Here is Jane Cooper with the City of Belvedere demonstrating the use of the trash bag method.
And that big noise speak to the coyote, and it creates that snapping noise.
And here's another hazing tool that's very simple to make, the scare stick. It's essentially a bamboo planter stake with a couple of mylar ribbons attached to the tip.
Go away!
When walking, I tuck mine down the back of my shirt like a quiver, so it's easy to grab but not in my way. See the link below for instructions. And here's Jane Cooper again demonstrating how to use the scare stick.
Confuses them and the sound snapping.
And use your voice. Research shows the human voice is one of the most effective deterrents for wildlife, even large predators like mountain lions. And that's why we emphasize voice over props, such as horns or whistles, especially in an urban environment where coyotes may already be desensitized to car horns, sirens, or other artificial noises. And here's a clip from Dave Waddles with the Massachusetts Division of Fisheries and Wildlife explaining how hazing can be effective when it's done correctly.
And then finally, it's a lack of harassment in body language and submissive body language by people towards coyotes. Coyotes naturally communicate with each other with dominance behavior. It's the dominant animals that get to establish a territory. It's the dominant male and female that get to mate and raise pups. It's the dominant pups that get more food. It's how they've learned to communicate their entire life. Dominance wins. If every time a coyote encounters a person, the person quickly turns and runs the other way, or they quickly jump into their car, or they run inside the house. Basically, that's teaching that coyote that it's dominant in the human-coyote relationship. Or people will say, I did haze, Dave, I did haze the coyote just like you told me. I said, what did you do? Well, I yelled at it from the back door and then I closed the door. All that's doing is saying to that coyote, hey, coyote, I'm over here. I'm going to go inside now and hide. You can do whatever you want in my backyard. And that's what these coyotes are learning over time. So changing these few behaviors can alter the way coyotes behave around us.
Now, some coyotes won't immediately run when hazed. They may move a short distance and then stop, turn broadside, and stare back. The response is to stay confident and keep applying steady pressure. Project your voice and take deliberate steps towards the animal until the coyote moves out of sight. Don't expect a coyote to respond to a car horn or from yelling from inside a car or yelling from inside a house or from a balcony. The messaging must come from the person directly to be effective. Now let's look at situations where you should not haze a coyote. If you encounter a coyote in its natural environment and it maintains a healthy distance, about 3 to 4 car lengths or more, without advancing towards you, just let it be. Also, be mindful of traffic. You don't want to haze a coyote onto a busy street and potentially cause an accident. Also, when a coyote appears sick or injured, like this poor animal suffering from a severe case of mange, these guys are often visible more during the day because they're cold and they're looking for a place to warm up. And just so you know, mange in bobcats and mountain lions has been directly associated with their exposure to rodenticides, rat poisons. And we believe mange in coyotes is also related to compromised immunity from their exposure to these poisons. As we mentioned earlier, this bait is simply poisoned food, and it's actually attracting rodents and other animals to the property. And when an animal eats a poisoned rodent, it's getting a dose of the poison, which can bioaccumulate and eventually lead to illness and death. It's a silent killer, our modern DDT. So if you see a sick or injured coyote, report it to authorities. You can find a list of local wildlife rehabilitators at the link provided. Okay, remember earlier we were talking about coyotes escorting or shepherding people who are walking dogs? If you're moving through the territory of a mated pair, a king and a queen, especially during pup season, this is something you should expect and be prepared for. The coyotes are not focused on you, the person, they're focused on the dog. So here's how to behave. Keep your dog on a short leash, no more than 6 feet, and stay alert. If you encounter one or more coyotes and you have a small dog, pick it up. With a larger dog, keep it close to your side and calmly leave the area. Use your voice as you go. Be firm and assertive, like, hey, go on. And if you're really prepared, you'll have a scare stick with you. Here's a great video. It shows you exactly what to expect, and this guy does an excellent job. Let's take a look.
Hey! 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 Get out of here! Hey! Hi! Get out of here! Hi, Tag. Let's go, buddy. I see you.
So again, when you're out walking with your dogs, keep them on a short leash, no longer than 6 feet. Have 1 or 2 hazing props on hand. A scare stick and a large trash bag would be great. But be sure to desensitize your dogs to these items ahead of time. At home, dogs left unattended in the yard are vulnerable. I don't know about you, but this image makes me uneasy. I worry about the dog's safety. There are just simply too many risks. Not just coyotes, but also from above. Some pet losses, initially blamed on coyotes, were later confirmed as predation by great horned owls. It's just not safe to leave small pets outdoors unattended. One simple way to reduce risk is to go outside first, make your presence known, use your voice, and then bring your dog out with you. In areas with known coyote activity, it's best to keep small dogs on a leash and carry a scare stick. I would say for most of us, our pets are our family, and as their guardians, it's our responsibility to protect them. That's exactly why we share these tools and this knowledge, so you can do just that. All right, so we've talked about what individuals can do, things like removing attractants, using deterrence, safeguarding pets. Now let's take a broader look at what a community-wide approach might look like. Knowledge is everything. Without it, we're left speculating. And that's where fear can grow out of control. As we gain knowledge, we begin to see the truth. Think of each piece of information as a pixel. The more we collect, the clearer the picture. And that's what communities should be striving for. An evidence-based understanding of how coyotes are using the landscape. How many are there? Are there resident pairs with established territories? And are they behaving normally? You might be wondering how it's even possible to determine how many coyotes live in a given area. The truth is, coyotes make it surprisingly straightforward. When you confirm a mated pair, you've identified a territory. And within a territory, things are predictable. In a resident pair's territory, you know you have at least 2 coyotes with the potential for temporary helpers. You can predict pups around March and April and prepare for the resident adults to be protective, like escorting dogs. Towards summer and through fall, you can anticipate increased daytime sightings and expect some of the young ones not to respond to hazing at first. And that's our opportunity to teach them. So how do you go about figuring out if you're in a coyote territory or not? Now this video shows a very typical urban coyote family. A male, a female, and a helper. Now notice a couple of things. Pregnant females often develop a subtle belly bulge, a soft rounding in the abdomen, with this fur that sits a little differently. And look closely, one of these individuals has a distinctive white-tipped tail. These details help you start recognizing who's in your neighborhood. Here's another video. Notice the belly of the coyote on the left. Very subtle. And sometimes you'll be able to catch them marking their territory. Later, after the pups are born, you'll be able to make out that it's a nursing female. In my work assessing coyote populations, tools like this surveillance camera are invaluable. But here's the good news, many of you already have them. And when a community comes together and shares footage and reports, those pieces of information begin to tell a story. Patterns emerge. Social structure becomes clearer. Surveillance cameras can also help identify routes of travel. For example, in this case, the footage confirmed that coyotes were using a break in the fence. Ideally, all non-emergency reports, like sightings and encounters, unusual behavior, should go into a centralized reporting system. A single source of data collection allows patterns to emerge and behavior to be analyzed accurately. It can start as simply as an online form with well-designed questions. Good questions lead to good data, and good data leads to good decisions. I'm a very visual person, so in my investigative work, I use Google My Maps. I use different colors and icons to reveal what's going on. While the data collection, things like taking reports, logging, and mapping, can be done by community volunteers, because of its importance, it really should be part of a municipal response plan. This will add credibility and ensure consistency. Having a response plan in place allows you to be proactive rather than reactive. It allows you to make decisions based on knowledge, and that knowledge allows you to build a science-based program that's tailored to meet the needs of your community, its unique landscape, wildlife, and people. One of the most valuable tools is the Behavior Classification and Response Guide. It's a chart that outlines common coyote behaviors and issues and provides guidance on the most appropriate response. It also should specify which behaviors may warrant consideration for removal, defining ahead of time exactly when lethal removal might be considered. Let's take a look at what removal looks like, including California trapping regulations. Because coyotes are highly intelligent, they seldom enter cage traps. As a result, trappers commonly use neck snares. And just a warning, the next slide shows a deceased coyote in a snare. Even when snares are fitted with stops to prevent strangulation, animals still endure extreme stress and pain as they struggle. If the animal is still alive when the trapper arrives, the animal may be shot if there are no restrictions. Otherwise, the trapper might resort to killing the animal in a gas chamber using carbon dioxide, a barbaric and inhumane method that's not approved by the American Veterinary Medical Association for wildlife in this context. Thankfully, California has some of the most restrictive trapping regulations in the country. California's trapping regulations require that all traps be clearly marked with an identifying number for the user. If the trap is set by a licensed trapper, this is typically the trapper's license number. Others must contact the California Department of Fish and Wildlife License and Revenue Branch to obtain a number that links them to the trap. Subsection 465.5G1 requires that trapped animals be immediately killed on site or released on site. They cannot be transported elsewhere to be killed, and they cannot be relocated to another area, for good reason. Research shows that animals that are relocated often die trying to come home. It also causes them stress and suffering and separates families. Finally, under subsection 465.5G3, it is unlawful for anyone, whether it's a property owner or licensed trapper, to set a trap within 150 yards of another person's home without those homeowners' written consent. That's a football field and a half in all directions. This regulation is about protecting pets and children, but it's also about property rights. In the United States, wildlife is not owned by individuals or agencies. It's held in trust by the government for the benefit of all people, present and future. This principle is known as the public trust doctrine. It establishes a legal and ethical duty for governments to protect wildlife as a shared public resource. So, this trapping regulation provides neighbors a right to a say, a voice, in what happens to the wild animals that share their community. Here's the thing to understand, that removal or lethal control has never been effective for reducing coyote populations or resolving human-coyote conflicts. Not ever. Time and time again, researchers conclude, despite repeated removal efforts, coyote totals rebounded, and sometimes even spiked, shortly after lethal control measures. Here, biologist and director of the Narragansett Bay Coyote Study, Numi Mitchell, explains it clearly.
With lethal control, often people shoot out the animals that are defending a territory and keeping other coyotes out. If you shoot a hole in that territorial boundary and 50 transients available to colonize, a lot of those animals will flow in, and you'll actually have more coyotes than you had to start with.
So how do we manage coyotes?
Basically, by managing ourselves.
It really does begin and end with us, our behavior. It's about being coyote smart. Just like people learn to live safely in bear country, we must adapt our behavior where there are coyotes, which is pretty much everywhere. By taking these precautions and working together, we can keep conflicts with coyotes to a minimum. Once again, let's watch a clip from Dave Wattles on how our behavior shapes coyote behavior.
This is because human behavior is a huge driver of wildlife behavior. As we've talked about a couple times now, I'm not going to hammer this too much more, intentional feeding. That is driving these things. If we remove the intentional feeding, there are very, very, very few bites of people by coyotes. Far, far more common, fortunately, is only intentional feeding. And this, I guarantee, is happening in your community, and I guarantee it's happening in some of your yards right now. This is the foods that we talked about before, the bird feeders, the compost, the pet food, the unsecured garbage, the free meals that coyotes are getting around our yards. These free meals are training coyotes that the best place to find food is in your yard, in your neighborhood. It's increasing the level of interaction you have with them. It's increasing the chances that there's going to be negative encounters with your pets. And so simply addressing these foods around our homes and our communities is going to decrease the presence of coyotes there. Also, because you're removing those foods that are supplementing the natural foods, over time, if you remove these foods, you're actually going to control more than I can as a manager, the number of coyotes that live in your area.
To drive this point home, And bear with me, this is a ridiculously simplified example. But look, this is based on scientific research. When coyotes have access to abundant food subsidies, their territories can become much smaller. But when those subsidies are removed, their territories expand. They need more territory to find enough food. And that's a good thing. So instead of this, it might look more like this, which means fewer coyotes overall, reduced density in the landscape. And I think that's our shared goal, reduced presence and prevalence of coyotes in the urban landscape. The purpose of this presentation was to equip you, the viewer, with the knowledge and know-how to prevent conflicts and to keep pets safe at home and within your yard. More broadly, we hope this information encourages community groups and municipalities to adopt proactive, science-based best practices. And in general, I hope this talk influences the way you see and speak about coyotes, always grounded in science and facts.